Good evening, everybody, again, and we're a full contingent now, and I really welcome you to our Planning Committee meeting number 228. And as is our usual tradition, we do pay our respects and to the traditional owners of this land and the Wadawurrung people, and we do pay our respects to those people as the custodians of the land, waterways and skies, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present and acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of our greater Geelong community today. So thank you once again for being here. I'm Councillor Jim Mason and am chairing this meeting, and I'd like to introduce from my left Councillor Nelson, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Aitken, the Mayor, Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Murray and Councillor Cadwell. I'd also like to introduce the officers. First of all, Julian Pollard, the Senior Statutory Planner, Statutory Planning, who's going to lead with the case today. If you can indicate your presence. Shane Pritchard, Team Leader, Statutory Planning. John Rush, Coordinator of Statutory Planning. And Joanne van Sluggeren, who is the overall Manager of City Development. We do have some apologies this afternoon. Councillor Maloney, Councillor Harwood, Councillor Grisbeck, Councillor Asher and Councillor Contell. Do we have any declarations of conflicts of interest? At this stage we have no declarations. Now we need to confirm minutes, councillors, for two committee meetings. First one was Thursday, November the 24th, 2022. Councillor Sullivan, Aitken and Nelson were present at that meeting. Can I have a mover? Yep. Moved Councillor Nelson, seconded Councillor Sullivan. All those in favour? Carried. And the second minutes that we need to confirm is the most recent meeting on the 23rd of March. Those present for that were Councillors Murray and Councillor Nelson. Moved Councillor Murray. Seconded Councillor Nelson. Those all in favour? Carried. Thank you. So the minutes of all of those meetings now are carried. So we're going to continue with our meeting now, and I need to advise you of some procedural matters that we need to please comply with. First, the officer will prepare a brief summary of the written report to the committee. The panel may then ask questions of the officer. The objectors or submitters will detail their concerns to the committee, and I ask you all to remember that there's a 3-minute limit on this, and I also ask you to understand that there's been very many objectors, up to I think it might be 170, something like that, and they're not all different reasons. So we don't need to hear the same reason over and over, and I will not accept the same 3 minutes with the same reason over and over today. So the panel may then ask questions of the objector and submitter, and then the applicant will detail their application and respond to any objector or submitter concerns to the committee and can have up to 10 minutes to do that. The panel may then ask questions of the applicant. The panel may then further discuss the application, and the panel will then make a decision. Now that decision of this committee is the final decision of the council acting under delegated authority, and if anybody is aggrieved of that decision, they may appeal to the VCAT, Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, and our staff can assist you with this process during office hours. So, just to formally make it clear that there were 2 items on the agenda today, but one has been withdrawn. That is PP 70422 for Vermeer Court, Grovedale. That's now going to a decision-making committee. So if there's anybody here expecting that, I'm sorry, that's been withdrawn, and I apologise. So the main item for consideration tonight, we only have one item. That's PP 1312 2021, which is 57 to 59 The Parade, Ocean Grove. So I'll ask our officer, Mr. Julian, to take it away.
Thanks, Councillor Mason. This application is for the development of a residential building, 3 stories in height for 16 dwellings with basement car parking for 29 spaces. I'll start by talking you through the plans, and we'll start with TP01, the neighbourhood context plan, which shows the existing conditions, site conditions. 57 The Parade contains a double-storey dwelling, approximately a maximum of 6.7 metres in height, located approximately in the centre of the site, with 59 The Parade, a single-storey dwelling located in the southern front section of the site. This section of the parade contains multi-dwelling development with 2 dwellings located at 61 at the parade, 2 dwelling development side-by-side development at 55 The Parade, 4 dwelling development at 62 The Parade, 5 dwelling development at 65 The Parade, with further 2 dwelling developments occurring further west at 47, 48 and 49 The Parade, and a 2 dwelling development up to 3-storey in height with a roof deck at 58 The Avenue, which is directly north of the subject site. To the east of the subject site, approximately 150 metres, is the Ocean Grove commercial area, where the Coles supermarket as well as a large number of retail premises are located, with associated large car parking spaces provided. The zoning and planning permit triggers are: the land is subject to the residential growth zone Schedule 3, which is coastal increased housing diversity areas, and the design and development overlays Schedule 14, which is for dwellings over 7.5 metres in height with access to views. A permit is required in the residential growth zone to construct 2 or more dwellings on a lot. A permit is required in the design and development overlay Schedule 14 to construct a dwelling which is more than 7.5 metres above the natural ground level. There's no permit required to demolish either of the 2 existing dwellings. The purpose of the residential growth zones that are most relevant to this proposal are to provide housing at increased densities in buildings up to and including 4-storey buildings, to encourage a diversity of housing types in locations offering good access to services and transport, including activity centres and town centres, to encourage a scale of development that provides a transition between areas of more intensive use and development and other residential areas, to ensure residential development achieves design objectives specified in the schedule to this zone. Now, within the schedule of the zone requires that future multi-dwelling development meets the requirements of Clause 1601 2L, increased housing diversity for coastal areas, in relation to the siding, height, scale, materials and form of the proposed buildings. It is also noted that within the schedule of the residential growth zone Schedule 3, it has a maximum building height of 10.5 metres. The design and development overlay Schedule 14 has the following objective: to ensure the siding, height and visual bulk of dwellings achieves a reasonable sharing of views between properties to the significant landscape features such as the coast, the ocean and foreshore, which includes in this area the Bluff, Ruffs Beach and the Bowen River, the proposal. So please refer to plans TP03 to TP08 for the floor plans of all levels, which is will work from the basement up to the roof, and TP10 to 14 for all elevation and streetscape elevations. Beginning with TP03, the basement level would consist of 29 car parking spaces with access along the eastern side section of the site, with a maximum width of 6.1 metres for cars to enter and exit the site. With lift access and waste refuge located within the centre of the basement, bicycle storage is provided along the eastern boundary where 16 bike spaces are provided. Looking at the plans, you can see the relevant setbacks to all property boundaries on all of the plans. Moving along to TP04, the ground floor will consist of 1 4-bedroom apartment, 3 3-bedroom apartments and 1 2-bedroom apartment with private open space ranging from 167 square metres down to 49 square metres located within adjacent outside courtyards. TPO 5 is the first floor, which consists of 5 two-bedroom apartments and 2 three-bedroom apartments with private open spaces located within the balconies, varying from 8 square metres up to 29.9 square metres in area. TPO 6 shows the second story. The second story will consist of 4 three-bedroom apartments with private open space located within the balconies, varying from 43.5 square metres up to 57.4 square metres. The maximum building height shown on all four elevations varies from 10.45 metres in height down to 9.98 metres. The roof plans show plant equipment 1.2 metres above the maximum building height. The building will be constructed from a variety of materials with masonry grade bricks, glass, tinted balustrade and vertical timber cladding and render grey finishes. There has been discussion in relation to if the plant equipment located 1.2 metres above the maximum building height should be included as part of the building height for the proposed development. A VCAT case in Aiken Properties v Hobson's Bay provides context on this matter, where the following was provided to determine that the plant equipment is not included within the maximum building height, with this direct quote from the VCAT case. And it's also within the Planning Committee report. The maximum height of the building to the parapet of the roof is 13 metres, with various services function rising approximately 1.2 metres above that height. The services proposed are on the roof are set back from site boundaries and are relatively confined in extent and height, comprising solar panels, screening, hot water units, burners and a lift overrun. We find none of the proposed rooftop elements are of a size, nature and type of construction to warrant consideration as a roofed element in their own right. This finding of fact allows the rooftop services as proposed without contravening the mandatory 13 metre building height limit, which was the case in that VCAT case. It is considered the plant equipment proposed in this development is consistent with the VCAT finding. We'll move along to the planning policy framework. The relevant planning policy framework clauses for this application are listed within the Planning Committee report, but we'll run through the main ones here. Clause 11.01(1)(r), settlement Geelong G21, has identified Ocean Grove as supported for planned growth. Clause 11.03.6L, the Bellarine Peninsula, sets out the following strategies for development within Ocean Grove: providing reasonable sharing of views of the coast and foreshore, promoting contemporary design that reflects the existing scale, setbacks, spacing, forms and materials of the buildings in the locality, ensuring that development allows for the protection of significant trees or planting around buildings and has minimal impact on roadside vegetation. The subject site is located within an area of increased housing diversity area, where clause 16.01(1)(L)(02) has the following strategies: encourage development that incorporates a combination of horizontal and vertical articulation, materials, textures and colours to create visual interest. Encourage a sympathetic design response when addressing any unique characteristics such as heritage places, significant vegetation, topography and public spaces. Encourage storage areas located within the minimum area of secluded open space. Support development that does not reduce opportunities for neighbouring sites to reasonably develop. Further policy direction is provided at clause 16.01(1)(L)(03), which is increased housing diversity for coastal areas, which further seeks a variety of lightweight materials, building elements and details that contribute to a lightness of structure, including balconies, verandas, extensive glazing, light transparent balustrading, simple detailing, higher building elements to capture views. Public notification was sent out, so letters were sent to the owners and a sign was placed on site, where we had 170 objections received. The main themes raised by objectors included: the development is inconsistent and unsympathetic to the existing neighbourhood and streetscape and is an overdevelopment of the site. The principle of this type of development is out of character with Ocean Grove. The development is out of character with the existing development in the street. There is a lack of on-street car parking in the parade and the subject site has no car parking at the front, which is inadequate, and traffic issues will occur from the development within this section of the parade. The proposed development is an overdevelopment of the site. The height is out of character with the existing development within the street and overbearing on neighbouring properties. The building design is out of character with the neighbourhood. Overlooking issues, impacts on view lines to the ocean and the bluff. As a failure to determine was lodged with VCAT, a consultation meeting was unable to be held. A compulsory conference was held at VCAT online on the 14th of February 2023. with the applicant and the objector, where after the conference amended plans were received by Council on the 14th of March 2023, and the application was re-advertised when no further objections have been received and no objections have been removed so far. The changes are listed on pages 127 or 128 of the Planning Committee report, where the main changes are the applicant has reduced the number of apartments from 17 to 16, and therefore the number of car parking spaces have reduced from 31 to 29, and as well as an amended view impact analysis from the rear of the site at the proposed development under construction at 58 The Avenue was also submitted. Grounds for refusal. Although it's noted that the subject site is located within an increased housing diversity area which centres around the Ocean Grove Town Centre, which seeks some form of development intensification, and there is some policy support for where some intensification and change of development is envisaged, it is still subject to consideration of the proposed built forms in regard to the following points. At issue is whether the proposed development will provide an appropriate transition from the existing development within the parade, as set out earlier within my report, and the relevant planning policy frameworks relevant to Ocean Grove and the Design and Development Overlay Schedule 14, whether there is the need for any proposed development to provide a design response that provides view lines between the built form to significant landscape features and a contemporary design that reflects the spacings and setbacks of the existing development is sympathetic in its design within a coastal setting of Ocean Grove. In regards to the sharing of views, page 134 of the Planning Committee reports sets out the approach of assessing reasonable sharing of view through the Healy decision at VCAT, which is quoted within the report in page 134. What you'll find is the key concepts of the decision are based on the value of the view to be lost and the parts of the dwelling where the view will be lost. The Healy decision explains that the loss of views should be assessed from parts of the dwelling that are most commonly used. Currently there are two 3-storey dwellings being constructed to the north, which is the rear of the site. As seen in the photos of within the Planning Committee report at pages 135 and 137, as well as the applicant's view impact analysis, the views from the living area and balcony from the living area of the dwelling to the east will be severely compromised from the proposal, where the view of the bluff and the majority of Raff's Beach, which are significant landmarks of Ocean Grove, will be lost or significantly altered. It is considered the dwellings have been designed for these views to be optimised, where views left will be to the inlet and Bowen River to the further west, which are considered lesser views compared to the bluff and Raff's Beach. In relation to the Ballerine policy for Ocean Grove, it is considered the 3-storey development is not in keeping with the setbacks to side and rear boundaries for a development of this size. When viewed from the properties to the north, the development provides a monotonous horizontal built form across the majority of the site at approximately 10.4 metres in height for a length of approximately 32 metres on the upper level. Does not respond to the rhythm and spacing of recent multi-dwelling development within the avenue and parade, and from this monotonous built form does not allow reasonable sharing of views through the site to the bluff, ocean and Raff's Beach. Although it is acknowledged that the proposal does provide higher building elements to capture the views and is just under the 10.5 height restriction under the General Residential Growth Zone Schedule 3, it is considered the design of the building to capture views is not considered to be an element of the design of the proposal. Rather, as you can see from the elevation plans in TP10 to TP14 provided, it is a continuous built form across the majority of the width of the site. Greater level of modulation or articulation of the upper level is considered to be required with breaks in the height of the built form to provide view lines through the site to allow properties in the north view lines of these significant vistas I spoke about just before, and be in keeping with the development of this section of the parade and surrounds. Yes, whilst it is acknowledged that there are dwelling developments that have been constructed to 10.5 metres in height within this immediate area of the parade and the avenue, the upper levels are generally a much smaller building footprint that allows for a break in the height of the built form to allow for reasonable views through the site to the coastline and the bluff, Raff's Beach and Bowen River. A recent example is to the direct north at 58 The Avenue, where the multi-dwelling development only has a small part of the site where the building height is a maximum of 10.5 metres, which are the stair voids for the upper level deck area, where there are sufficient setbacks from property boundary to allow for views through the site to the coastline from properties further to the north. The location of the proposal does have some policy support in relation to its location and zoning for some form of multi-dwelling development. However, it is required to be assessed against the relevant planning controls of the City of Greater Geelong Planning Scheme and in relation to sharing of views and allowing views through the site, where the built form needs to meet the locally based ocean grove policies and coastal policies regarding increased housing diversity areas, and therefore it is respectfully requested that the application is refused subject to the grounds within the Planning Committee report.
Thank you, Julian. I think you mentioned it had been to VCAT, and since then there had been no objections. Could you just explain that a bit further?
So what had happened, because there'd been a reasonable amount of time since the application was advertised, I think it was July last year, the member at VCAT decided that the amended plans needed to be re-advertised to the neighbouring properties in case someone recently had just moved in, so they're aware of their proposal.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the councillors? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Julian, has this had some history? I just note there was a planning permit in 2017 on this site, 2019 and 2021.
So 2021 is this one, and there was townhouse development approved in those ones for four.
Sorry, would you say that?
Four townhouses. Yes.
But the amended plans have only come back to on the 14th of March.
That's correct, where they've dropped one apartment, but basically the building footprint's very similar in size.
Any other questions, councillors?
I'm not sure.
It appears there's no more questions for now. We might have some more later. So we'll continue now with the objectors. We have 10 people that have registered for objection today. One of those people can't be here, and that's Terry Draper. But we do have an email from Terry Draper which is being and has been circulated. We'll have 9 other people who can speak. Is Jennifer Killingsworth here? Would you like to come forward? Please sit, take it easy, sit down. Jennifer Killingsworth.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for letting me participate. I'm a resident of the parade. The parade is an accident waiting to happen. There is inadequate parking, no infrastructure, no footpaths, and we're going to put a development of 16 houses on a double block. I know here in Australia we cannot buy a view, unlike, Sausalito, America, and in Auckland. However, there is no consideration that Ocean Grove should become a Gold Coast. We need to have housing that is appropriate for the area. Overdevelopment of 16 apartments on a double block is just outrageous. I'm all for development. I've got 2.5 blocks of land in the parade. And if this goes, every house in the parade will be like going to the Gold Coast. Everybody wants a view. Everybody wants to have the Ocean Grove address. However, to have that infrastructure is a priority. There's been no consideration to the residents who have lived there for years, but somebody who doesn't even live in Ocean Grove comes in, sees the advantages of knocking down houses to put up high-rise. We haven't even got parking. Where do the people who have 2 one park, 1.5 parks. There's nothing on that says where the handicap parking is, and handicap parking is usually 2 parks, not 1, because we've got to have access for wheelchairs. That's not on the plan. How are we to know that they are not going to put roof gardens on the top floor? Because there are several houses in Ocean Grove, and I can tell in 100A Dare Street, that was never in the original building plan to have a roof garden. Hello, halfway through, we've got a plan for a roof garden. How do we know that's not going to happen here in this development?
Thank you, Jennifer. We might have some questions, so we'll just see if there are any questions. We might have them later. Any now? Okay, thanks, Jennifer. The next person we have listed is John Finlayson.
Oh,
Thanks, John.
I'm at 54 The Parade, and yeah, so I suppose our main objection, we're not sort of right next to it, but the issue is in terms of traffic management, mainly to do with the hill and the way that the cars and trucks, we've got Coles trucks that come down, and what's going to happen is this is going to become an Airbnb palace, because as we know from 101, I think it is, The Parade, 80% of that, which is a 11 unit development, is basically Airbnb. So the issue is with that, the overflow of cars, and we also have at the bottom of the parade, there's an Airbnb that's there, and we have between 6 and 7 cars there every weekend. And so we're always dodging cars right at the end of the street, and it's dangerous. But where we are in the parade, as we pull out, I've got a picture which I can show you. So that's our view looking out. And when there's 2 cars parked like that, we can't even get out. So basically, we're going to be blocked in, and we can only turn left. So we won't have access to the street at all. So that's an issue. The rise is dangerous. We have 2 wheelchairs that come as a lady and a gentleman that have no footpath to drive their wheelchair up. And basically, if there's 2 cars parked side by side like that, they have to drive between those cars. There's no alternative. So, and you got a truck or a car coming over the top, they're doing 50. We have tradies that do 70 down there, and it's just mental. So there's been so many near misses. Our neighbours' cars, they've had their mirrors knocked off, and it's all because between the cars, there's only about 3 metres. You take that down with mirrors, you're only talking about 2.75. Trucks are 2.5. So basically, that's what happens. So, and once you come up that rise, it's a blind rise, and you can't do anything. So it's a very difficult position, and as we said, that 2-hour parking in front of the units is basically going to stop everybody from parking outside of the units. They'll be in our area down the bottom, and it will allow very little views, and so you end up doing that. Dodging cars all the time. So, and that's the issue that we've got with that. And I'll go back to, as I said, the Airbnb that's at the end of the street. That's what happens every weekend. 6 to 7 cars every weekend. And we have to dodge that every time. So it's so annoying. And as I said, this whole thing is just complete overdevelopment for no reason. It's just overkill.
Thank you, John. Just in time, John, the bell's gone. Just to follow on with your traffic, this is happening before the developments occur.
Well, that is only because there was a party across the street. Usually there's hardly anyone there, and the issue is in summer, that's what happens, is an overflow from the car parks. They all come down there, they realise they can't park for 2 hours, so they'll park in our area down the bottom and park over our driveway. So basically we can't turn right.
As far as the development's concerned, are you objecting also? I believe there's there's 16, I forget how many car parks are in there now. How many car parks are? 29, plus 3 visitor parks, I think. So that's being accommodated. Do you have an answer to that?
Well, basically the issue is that at the other Airbnb that's down the bottom, what I'm trying to point to is the fact that the overflow of cars, not everybody's going to park in there. They're going to come and park on the street, and to park on the main street is 150 metres the other way. To park our way, down the hill, on the hill, is basically only about 50 or 60 metres. So the whole area where you park, where it's, you know, basically a full standing zone, is basically going to block up the view, and it's going to make everything more concise. That's the problem.
Thank you, John. Do any councillors have any questions? Julian, do you have a response as far as the traffic recommendations are concerned?
I was referred to our traffic engineers who just came back with conditions.
Okay. Thanks very much, John. Chris McKenzie for Norm and Coral Trigger. Thank you, Chris.
Are you on or do I? Yeah, there we go. We're good.
If the red light's on, you're ready to go.
Yeah, I've got it now. Thanks. Good evening, councillors. Yeah, I'm Chris McKenzie. I'm a planning advocate. I'll be involved in the upcoming VCAT hearing. Just to be clear, this is the first time council's being asked to make a decision in relation to this application. It's been taken to VCAT prior to council making any decision, and the recent session at VCAT was a structured negotiation or mediation session to see if there could be a resolution, but there was no resolution. So it's now set to go to a hearing, and tonight is council's sort of first and only chance to make a formal position in relation to the application. So I'm speaking on behalf of Norm and Coral Trigger. They're a retired couple in their 80s who live next door at number 55B, so they're going to be one of the most directly affected properties in relation to this application. They recognise that the planning scheme generally supports housing redevelopment in the parade, and that new development can have new impacts. But one of the critical things that they're concerned about is that the planning system is seeking to achieve new development that responds politely and appropriately to the neighbours and to the policies that are set out in the planning scheme. And as you've heard from Julian's report today, this design does not achieve that expectation. So it's not an objection that's based on not wanting change, it's specifically the concerns about the impact of this development on them and their other neighbours. So we're pleased to see that Council's Planning Department's recommending refusal, and we endorse all of the reasons that they have put to you. But for Norm and Coral in particular, I just want to point out another particular issue that's of great concern to them. The ground floor of this proposal sits about 700 mil above their boundary level, and that puts it about a metre higher than their actual floor level. That means the ground floor for these proposed apartments, all along their side boundary, sits about halfway up the fence. Anyone standing on a balcony or inside looking out one of the windows that are floor to ceiling with no screening are going to look straight down over the fence into a series of bedrooms and their main living room. From the first and second floor, they look down straight into the windows of the upper floor of this development at about 4 metres, which is about metre Julian away. Well inside the planning scheme expectation and not properly designed to respond to that context where the two sites are at different levels. The fence doesn't sort the problem out. It's a design solution that hasn't been dealt with. So that's a great concern for Norm and Coral. It's interesting to note that this proposal for this site actually has its floor level sitting higher than the new development up behind in the avenue. So the land keeps rising, but this site has managed to sit higher. What that means, or what the reason for that, is that they're seeking to build the biggest development they can that's going to sit as high and as proud as it can to get as much view as they can at the expense of the neighbours, and with this overlooking issue at the expense of the neighbours to the sides. So we endorse Council's recommendation for refusal, and would ask also that Council look to include reference to the overlooking standard B22, which could be added to refusal ground 4 in the report as an additional reason to recognise the concerns of Norman Coral next door. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Any councillors got questions? Councillor Murray?
Not so much to Chris, but to, I guess, Julian, the issue you raised about the design solution, about looking into neighbouring properties. Surely there must be screenings on this building to prevent that.
There's overlooking diagrams on TP 22 and 24, but there's also, if there was an alternate motion, there's also condition 1 requiring further overlooking issues to be
Any other questions? Thanks very much, Chris.
Thanks.
And now Andy McCoy. Welcome, Andy.
I'm Andy McCoy, representing the Ocean Grove Community Association. We wholly endorse the planning report as it stands and support the rejection of the proposal. We support the traffic issues. We are vaguely horrified that all the immediate residents surrounding this development lose all private space. If somebody's standing on the edge of the balcony looking over, to use the privacy of their own backyards are significant. The thing that concerns us the most is if council, if this gets approved by VCAT, this will form a template for the rest of this high density zone around the Ocean Grove Shopping Centre, and in 8 to 10 years' time, the whole built environment around the shopping centre could be 3-storey monstrosities like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a moment. Stay there. We might have some questions for you. Oh, you must have read the room very well. No questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Alan Nicol.
Hello everyone. I live at number 161 The Parade, and my grief is that the driveway is going to be right beside my bedroom. The compensation I've been given is to have another 2 feet further away from my my property, which is unacceptable. The driveway being on my side is unacceptable for the simple reason I have a 50s house, a bullnose weatherboard. Acoustically, it was acceptable until now, but it's timber. I've got no other things that I've got no insulation type thing to stop me from having the noise of traffic decelerating and accelerating coming up that driveway if it's positioned there. I'm going to probably end up sleep deprived if these cars are coming up and down day and night, well, night I should say, and to me it's quite unacceptable. And I think that I need some sort of sound barrier, and I just find it hard to believe that that driveway would be an option at all, when the option, in my mind, is down the bottom side on the 50s side, not, sorry, I think it's 55. Yeah, it's more appropriate than where I live. So I'm just not happy with this outcome at the moment, but I just want to voice that my house is very, well, it's close to, it's very close to the property, and it's an area that will be subject to a lot of noise. So, yeah, I think this is my main grief. The other grief I have is I've got a well on my property that's very close to the line of where the driveway is. And also the other compensation that's been given to me is that I'll only have a 5-foot fence along my property line, where I'm used to a garage that's halfway down my property. So that's where I'm coming from, and all my bedrooms are on that side, right where these cars are going to come up and down. So that's what I want to approach at the moment.
Thank you, Alan. Councillors, any questions? Thanks, Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. A question possibly for the officers. What engineering solutions have been proposed or can... I was just wondering, a question for the officers in particular, whether there's any capacity for engineering solutions that can actually manage some of those acoustic issues that the resident is going to experience?
I believe an acoustic fence as a condition as well.
Could you please speak into the microphone?
With the possibility of a condition with an acoustic style fencing as well.
Has that not been proposed currently?
It's not in the alternate motion, no.
Just on that acoustic and noise, did you have an opportunity to discuss this with the applicant?
It's been mentioned, but no, we want to take that further. I mean, we think, I just can't believe that's an option to have that driveway on my side. It should be on the Coral and Norm side. They get more sunlight. If they've got that driveway on their side, that's an area that they're concerned about. I don't care about the sunlight, basically. If the building's up on my side and I lose a bit, because I've got only one window on my side of that building, that's going to propose building.
Okay, understand. So the sunlight issue is another problem. They're imposing there on the western side. I think Councillor Murray had a question.
Look, I have, Alan, it's probably nothing to do with this application, but did you say you had a well on your property?
Yes, there is. It's we found the well and we notified everybody, Historical Society, that this well was there, because I was just digging in the front yard, and I'm not going to digress too much, but I've lost my spade. It disappeared. And then we dug a little bit out, and these bricks were around, and it's about 9-10 feet across, and then it bulbs out. And the Historical Society mentioned to them, they said, yes, it's an old well used by Cobb and Co. And it used to be a farmyard. Your place used to be a farmyard. And so that's how this well come about. We dug it out a bit, and everything was, it's still there. So, yeah, so that's the situation.
Fantastic. Thanks very much.
Okay.
I was intrigued by it. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Alan. We noticed the passion of the immediate past heritage chair.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Pleasure.
So we'll call now Shirley Nicol.
Sorry, I know you said you didn't want repetition, but I didn't know what Alan was going to speak about, because he said he's just doing it off the top of his head, whereas I had typed out what I'm saying, and it is a bit of repetition, so if I could still do
Well,
that.
I think you'd take precedence if you had prepared it so well.
Okay, my name is Shirley Nicol, joint owner of Unit 1, 61 The Parade, since 1986. Council received 170 objections to this development. Because of time constraints, I am limited to speaking about the concerns that affect me personally, even though I do strongly feel that the proposed development is unsuitable for the parade because of traffic issues. I am opposed to the placement of open driveway to the basement, running the full length of my property from front to back, so close to the bedroom wall of my single-storey weatherboard home, which is only 1.5 metres from the boundary with 59 the parade. Page 130 of Council's agenda shows the response to my objection number 8 reads in part, "It is considered the proposed access to the basement will be located in the same location as the existing vehicle crossover, where although the number of vehicles will be increased, the vehicles will be driven underneath." This response is misleading because at present number 59 has a rendered garage wall on the boundary with my property running the length of my bedroom. This garage houses a maximum of 2 vehicles. The open driveway ramp for the proposed development is to accommodate vehicles for 29 car spaces plus rear loader waste disposal vehicles. These additional vehicles will cause unacceptable noise, particularly through the night, for me and my husband, and despite our request for a soundproofing barrier wall, the developer proposes only a simple paling fence to separate us from the open driveway. The response to objection number 11 on Council's agenda, page 130, noise impacts on adjoining properties from having 17, now 16, dwellings proposed, reads in part, "Given the development is for apartments, there would not be a significant increase to any noise levels within this area." This is totally incorrect, and to infer so is offensive to us. Despite Council receiving correspondence from the Principal Archaeologist of Heritage Victoria alerting Council to the presence of a deep handmade well dating back to the 1800s, located on my property only 140 centimetres from the boundary with 59 the parade, Council encouraged the developer to position the driveway ramp on the eastern side of the development rather than the western side to avoid the need to remove a tree from the nature strip on the west side. As the already fragile well bulbs out under the surface, we are concerned that excavation so close to the boundary with our property may compromise the well, causing subsidence of our front yard and possible damage to our foundations. Since the VCAT compulsory conference, the plans have been amended to show the water tanks are now located under the driveway ramp, further adding to our distress about excavating so close to the well. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Any questions, councillors? Thank you, Shirley. Nolan.
Good evening.
Hello, Vicky.
We are directly behind this proposal. We're at 58 the Avenue. Julian said that we're under construction, but we actually have now got an occupancy permit, so we are pretty much complete. Before we purchased the land to build, we did our due diligence and discovered that we would be protected by DDO 14, which covers view sharing. There have been several other VCAT cases which Julian did touch on, and basically the conclusion was that the most obvious starting point is to make an assessment from those positions that are likely to be most commonly utilised. So from our living room, we currently enjoy views over to the bluff to our west, which is a significant landmark, and water views to the east where we watch the boats come in. The loss of views will be significant and dramatic with severe effects to us. Our views will not only be lost, but completely obliterated in this instance. The services above the roof are also very bulky and increasing the height by a further 1.2 metres. This is not your usual services just above a roof. It's going to be servicing 16 apartments. So there will be multiple air conditioners and the lift overrun and whatever else that they put up there, solar systems. We do appreciate that the proposed development is in a growth zone and would like it to point out the recent development at 89 The Avenue, where the developer started with a high-rise apartment and amended the plans to 9 townhouses. The outcome is great and still achieves a considerable increase and growth, and it's an identical size double block as to what this is, and they went from 2 to 9 residences. A similar outcome would resolve the view sharing's issues and fit into the neighbourhood much better. For those of you that are not too familiar of what actually ended up in 89 The Parade, or The Avenue, sorry, it's still 9 residences, similar, this is the photo of it. During the process, I did request to meet with the developers several times to convey my concerns, but they dismissed the request. The proposal has not been addressed in such a way to allow for view sharing and to blend with the existing neighbourhood. We are not saying no to developing this site. We appreciate that that's what the growth zone means. But we would like it to be sympathetic to its immediate surroundings, reduce the visual bulk, and incorporate some mature trees along the boundaries. At the moment, the rear boundary of this three-storey building, is 4.5 metres from the fence, from our fence. Our pool is about 3 metres away, directly overlooking into our pool. It needs to be set back further. It needs to have some mature trees along there to soften it. There is no softening. They may be showing, pretty trees in their photos, but it's just not possible. You cannot plant a mature tree within 4.5 metres of another property. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you.
So you say you've got a property there which you've just got an occupancy permit for?
Yes, we have. We plan to retire there, so this means a lot. We designed it. We had everything completely designed, did all our due diligence to make sure that these views would be saved. And we know there's DDO 14 on the proposed site, which clearly stipulates view sharing.
Okay, just while we're mentioning that, I'll ask the officers to explain, please, further. What does that mean, the Design and Development Overlay Schedule 14?
So it triggers a planning permit for any dwelling over 7.5 metres that they've got to provide a reasonable sharing of views.
So when you bought your property, that was your understanding?
Yes, we made several calls and spoke to several town planners, because before we went into somewhere to retire to, we really wanted to do our due diligence and make sure that that's what we want, where we wanted to build.
Okay. Any other questions, councillors? Thanks, Vicky. Chris Foster.
Good evening, everyone. My wife Jenny and I live at 38 The Parade, and we've lived there for 9 years, and holidayed there for a previous 9 years, so we've been there around 18 years. We walk the parade daily and have a good understanding of the pedestrian and traffic movement in the area. We also have a good view of traffic movement from our living room window. Whilst we do not support the proposal for such a bulky, intrusive and out-of-character development in general, our main concern and objection is in relation to the impact on on-street parking, traffic intensity and pedestrian safety, particularly during the construction phase. Having 14 additional residential units in this location will increase traffic in an already congested street with limited on-street parking. Currently, there is no provision for safe pedestrian or mobility scooter passage west of President's Avenue, as no footpaths exist in any way. I walk this street regularly pushing my grandson in a pusher, and it's a bit like Russian roulette. The parade is a major thoroughfare for pedestrians walking to the main beach, to the river and to the bowling club. Due to the undulating nature of nature strips and the lack of footpaths, pedestrians must walk on the road, risking injury, particularly when walking around vehicles parked on the street, and more particularly on both sides of the street, which is the case up at 57 to 59. The same applies to those on mobility scooters. Walking or moving around parked cars exposes you to moving vehicles from behind and approaching. So this is an existing condition that will be made worse. During construction of this size, we would expect many trades vehicles to be parked on the street, which is currently very limited. Further, given that a major excavation over 2 blocks is to occur with the construction of the underground car park, we would expect many trucks to be moving on and off the property for an extended period. This will mean that pedestrians or mobility scooters moving east or west past the property will need to not only negotiate the additional trades vehicles parked on the street, and most likely illegally parked due to limited parking, but also loaded dump trucks going to and from the site, as well as normal traffic. This presents an extremely dangerous situation for both pedestrians and mobility scooter riders. Ongoing, we believe that the proposed on-site visitor parking is inadequate, and this has been discussed previously, but based on precedents, it is most likely that a number of these apartments will be utilised as Airbnb. These tend to attract multiple vehicles. For example, as I said before, a Airbnb at the end of the parade has up to 8 vehicles parked in and around the property on most weekends. On these sort of multiples, the overflow will naturally flow onto on-street parking, which is at best limited to even now, but consider in peak holiday periods will be impossible for people to park. Further, the intersection of the parade and President's Avenue is dangerous under current conditions due to the misalignment of the west and east sides of the parade, where it crosses President's Avenue. Confusion reigns when vehicles heading south down President's Avenue, turning right into the parade, confront vehicles heading north up President's Avenue, turning right into the parade. Increased traffic during construction and subsequent with an additional 14 residences will increase traffic congestion at this intersection with increased chances of accidents and injury. That is all.
Thank you, Chris. Councillors, any questions? Thanks very much. And our last speaker in regards to objections is Sean Parnell. Oh, look, I'm sorry, Miss, I can't even read. So, just a moment, Sean. Do we have any other general questions now from the objectors in regards to the objections? Okay, so now could we have the applicant, please, Sean Parnell?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and councillors. Sorry, I'll just put on my glasses.
Good evening. Thanks, Sean.
I am one of the owners of the application at 5759 The Parade, and our representation has not been able to make it this evening, so I have a prepared statement issued by the UXD Group. Therefore, on behalf of UXD Group and that of our experts, and with regard to the Planning Department's grounds of refusal, we'd like to highlight some of the following. First of all, the neighbourhood character. The property is zoned within a residential growth zone. The zone clearly encourages applicants to provide housing at increased densities and seeks developments as the proposed. It is Geelong City Council, you, who have adopted this policy. The design response has been framed in accordance with this policy, and to state differently would be a separation of Council's very own direction for Ocean Grove. In the built form, it's noted that the Planning Department claims that the proposed built form is not satisfactory due to density, mass and scale. However, we'd like to bring to the Council's attention that the Planning Department's very own urban designer contradicts this position and supports the proposed with no changes. In addition to the urban designer's support, we'd also like to highlight that all other referral departments support the proposed development. In relation to the Clause 55 standards, it's highlighted to councillors that the Town Planning Department have claimed within their grounds for refusal that the development does not satisfy 4 out of the 53 design standards. However, the Planning Department again contradicts this position by confirming compliance with 3 out of the 4 standards identified within their Clause 55 assessment. The only standard which the Planning Department does not contradict themselves is the development's response to neighbourhood character. However, and as already highlighted, the Planning Department's views on neighbourhood character are subsequently contradicted by the nature of the residential growth zone. In relation to the view impact, we're a little disappointed that the Planning Department has not fully disclosed the view impact assessment provided to Council. So out of, there's only been one of the 31 photo montages provided to councillors this evening, which is somewhat concerning with such a significant decision before Council. Accordingly, and as illustrated within the full view impact assessment, we believe that shared views are afforded to neighbouring property in accordance with the DDO 14 and that of Healy v Surf Coast Shire. So in summary, it's clearly evident that the development strongly complies with the relevant planning policy and controls in which Geelong City Council have put forth for Ocean Grove. Furthermore, I'd also like to just read a statement on behalf of one of the owners, and that is Bruce Wilson, who's unable to attend this evening. And he states, "Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you are all familiar with the Ocean Grove Structure Plan 2007, reiterated in 2016, as it is your document. Within that document there are zones, and this land in question falls within the high growth zone. It is not just on the fringe of the zone, but it is right in the middle of the zone. So from my point of view, it's very simple. The design complies with the zone. The planner who assessed the application and by default the Planning Department have now decided on how they interpret the zone, and you, Council, are going to decide on how you interpret the zone. So then ultimately VCAT will interpret the zone. I'm sure others will be watching the outcome of this closely, as this is going to be a precedent for ongoing development. So you need to be careful what you wish for, as you will be sending a message to developers. Despite what many believe, developing is not a licence to print money. It is a costly and risky business, and the current financing environment makes it nearly impossible, and council problems exacerbate the situation. There's no guarantee this will be built, but something will be built, and personally, that will not be as good as what is proposed. So if we compare the property on the avenue at the rear, which is the north, 57 the Parade, it is built in the high growth zone. It has two properties, with one on the market at the moment for $3.5 to $4 million, and the other to be owner occupied. The proposal being presented is an average of 8.5 apartments on the same land size, with site prices having a likely range of $950 to $2.5 million. I ask which design meets the structure plan better. I understand the emotion from the objectors, other than the one at the rear of the site. However, the problem for the objectors is the zone, not the proposed project. So you're about to reject or support the zone from your own document in your decision. And there is a silent majority in Ocean Grove, and their voice has not been heard. Mr Wilson lives in Ocean Grove, he's a resident and fully supports this style of development. He cannot wait for the Costa Group to develop the corner of Hodgson, Parade and the Terrace, as he believes the Ocean Grove Street is uninviting to say the least. Perhaps that same amount of focus should be placed on that being improved as the amount of effort being put into fighting a development that may or may not be built. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Councillors, any questions? I've got one, Sean. Just for example, the neighbouring gentleman with the bedroom. Were you able to discuss that issue with him? Would it not be easy to solve that acoustic problem?
Yes, look, I haven't been the person who has been representing ourselves. However, that request does not sound unreasonable. And I cannot say whether or not our representative has been approached on that or not.
Can you explain why there has been limited consultation on these matters? And
I think it's been advertised since July last year, and people have been entitled to object, which people have, and we had compulsory hearing back in February, so I would consider that consultation.
Okay. Councillors, any other questions? I've got one further question about the view sharing, the design and development overlay schedule 14. Have you had discussions about that and possible ways of accommodating those needs?
Well, we have had, and we, 1, 2, 3, 4 of us have actually been to 58 the Avenue and looked at the views, and we were not granted access to the western townhouse because that was going to be quite obvious that views were not impacted from the second level. The one on the eastern side is the only one that we were granted access to, citing health and safety, or not being able to access, even though it was pretty well finished. So it is something that we think that there is sufficient view sharing, and you've only been provided one of the 31 photo montages. And we set up height poles. I was physically there that day helping do so, and with land surveyors there as well.
Thank you. So have we got any other questions, councillors? Do we want to have any discussions? Or do we have somebody? Got something to say, Councillor Nelson?
Been said, and I'll put a motion to end refusal as per council officers' recommendation.
Okay.
I'm happy to second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So you can speak to the motion then, please, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Been sitting here for a bit over an hour, and I apologise for being late. It's one of the joys of having a day job. But we've all got to do it because we all have to pay our mortgages. So I do apologise for being late. As we've all heard, this is within the residential growth zone. So for that reason, it's the right development in the area according to the letter of council's regulations. It's a 3-storey building. It's within its height, so it meets our policy regulations. However, I don't believe it's within neighbourhood character. Yes, there is a 3-storey building behind it. That's a matter for another time we can discuss. 170 objections tells me that the community don't want it, and that's why you've turned out tonight. I can see some familiar faces out there, so it's good that you've come and had your say. I certainly listen to the community. You're not my community. I don't live in Ocean Grove. I live in Highton, but I certainly advocate for my Highton community. I've always done that, and I'll always do that. Perhaps it's time, as the applicant said, to look at the DDOs around Geelong, because they're obviously not in keeping with community expectations. And I was voted by my community, as everyone here was. So perhaps we need to look at the DDOs and perhaps change them. I'm not saying that we should, but I think we certainly need to look at them because there's inappropriate developments popping up everywhere because they meet the guidelines. So I think we as a group probably need to change that. So I'm going to support council officer's recommendation to refuse this permit. Fellow councillors have their say.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Nelson, for moving the recommendation. A lot of items are raised by concerns of residents, and all of them are valid. The ones about the use of the proposition we have here of the application, we're seeing about lack of car parking, of safety, which is paramount for an area that is seeing higher and higher rates of residential usage and impact on the area. I'm very intrigued, actually, being questioned about if we are familiar with our own documents and the concepts of silent majorities, whereas it's majorities who actually, define elections for councillors on these committees. And I wouldn't say 170 objections is a silent majority in the other way either. So it's very interesting, and it's more of the lines of careful what you wish for. Very intriguing words. Happy to second the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Murray.
I'm supportive of the officer's recommendations as well. A few reasons, and I think they've been covered, and they're pretty much across the board. I don't believe this is an appropriate site for the intensity that's proposed, and actually I've written density here a few times, and I just think it's so overdeveloped, or the applicant is attempting to so overdevelop this site, which is out of, I believe, character of Ocean Grove. It's out of character with the existing development in the street. And I do place significant weight on the clause, the Bellarine Peninsula clause to provide reasonable sharing of views. It's been discussed, not at length, but it's certainly been raised tonight. So I place some weight on that and what's written in the report. So to Jennifer, John, Chris, Andy, Alan, Shirley, Vicky and Chris and all that are here tonight, we've heard you. And I want to make a comment too about, and Councillor Sullivan has supported me with those, what I would say perhaps a forceful approach tonight from the applicant, which I don't quite understand. But in any event, I didn't place any weight on that, but I'll make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. I second the sentiment here tonight to support the the council officer's decision to refuse the permit. I think the community sentiment is quite clear. 170 objections makes it very clear that it's not a wanted development in its current form. The objections that have been raised here tonight make it clear the array of issues raised, particularly the concerns about traffic management and safety, the overshadowing and the privacy concerns. I have really nothing further to add. I think it's already been said, but I likewise support the recommendation to refuse the permit.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell. Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Chair Mason. Look, I don't want to repeat what the other councillors have said, but I too support the officer's recommendation that's been presented before us and strongly backed up by the community's representation before us tonight, Councillor Mason. And in fact, the officer's recommendation isn't just a refusal, it actually goes into significant detail why it actually should be refused. And in fact, nearly every planning component that's required under our policies, this proposal actually doesn't meet them when you actually read the officer's recommendation. The officers have said that essentially it doesn't meet the neighbourhood character policy requirements, it doesn't meet the side and rear setback policy requirements, it doesn't meet the front fence objective policy requirements, and it doesn't meet the communal open space requirements. So what does it meet? Well, nothing when you actually look at the officer's refusal. This is now going before VCAC, so unfortunately the community will have to actually make representation again at that forum, and because I'm quite confident, because the officer's recommendation of refusal is extremely strong, they will represent that position quite strongly before the Commission and the Tribunal as well too. So we'll wait with interest to see what decision is actually made by VCAC, but certainly based on the officer's recommendations and the strong community representation, it should also be refused at that forum as well too.
Thanks, Councillor Aitken, and I won't repeat all of that, but I will add a few words. We take note of the suggestion about precedent, and I think we'll be setting a precedent tonight, perhaps, that a development might be within various parameters, but it can go to an extreme as well. And so I note that the view sharing, the department, the DDO Schedule 14 has not taken into account the reasonable needs of the neighbours. I note that very many design parameters have been complied with, but they've been complied with to the extent when we start looking at neighbourhood character and imposition on the neighbourhood, it's not befitting of the neighbourhood. So though development is welcome in these areas, in the residential growth zone, and it's in our design parameters to have such a thing, this particular type of development is too massive, too monolithic, and too inflexible, and a big imposition on the community. So I too will support this refusal. So at this point, I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the motion?
I'm going to close.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr Chair. No worries, I'll be really quick, sorry. Just in closing, I've really listened to the community on this one with regard to parking. It is a really narrow street. I've been down it many times, and the safety is a real issue with that narrow street. I heard about Airbnbs, and that's probably an issue for council again that we need to look at. The amount of people that are here tonight, it's obvious you love where you live, and this is all about loving where you live because of the amenity. That's why we all live where we live, because we love living there. And I wish you well at VCAT, but you've got the backing of council officers with you this time, so good luck. Thanks, Mr Chair.
Thank you. So I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Just to let you know, this has been live streamed. I think it'll be stopped any moment now, but be careful what you say. John.
I'll catch you, Councillor Mason. I'm just turning off the live stream.
Well, there we go. Thank you, Councillor Aitken.
That's okay, Jim.
We nearly didn't get a quorum, did we? Thank you for diverting
Congratulations
your
on your
attention
first
from something else, and I'll be attending that tomorrow morning.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, the eating sort of
It's 1.8
I think I must have.
Is that a cut?
No. Thanks, man.